So for all of you out there, today I feel like was a really big day for us. We actually got to see really, I think close to all of everything being animated from beginning to end, all the end credits and everything. It looks great. I don't even know where to begin of everything that's been going on, but wow. So what you're going to see in this version is you're going to see the end credits animated. The whole film is animated. We're still trying to maybe do a tweak here and there, but it's all animated. You're going to see the end credits. You're also going to be able to hear our first pass at the sound design. You've always been hearing the sound design that Hjalti and I have put together in the animatic, but now you're hearing the first pass of the sound design. Enjoy that because parts of it will change, but and all of the score is in there. So really, along with the everything lit, almost everything lit and rendered. I think we have like 2 days and then that's it, like render pencils down, right? But it's pretty exciting. I know that this will not be our final get together. We'll probably be next Friday, but it's pretty awesome to see what we've accomplished to make something which I'm really proud of. So I'm going to have Hjalti come up, but I know I've got to give this to Hjalti. So because hold on a second, we sometimes share clothes. So Hjalti, here you go. Let me give you this. Okay.
All right. All right. Happy International Denim Day.
It's a lie.
I made it up. I didn't know it was an actual thing. Okay. So sharing and then caring. And here we go. Weeklies. Fun, fun, fun. Okay. So we've made a full version with score and now with sound effects from Sander and the team and all of that stuff. That's fantastic. But we're also kind of, doing tiny little tweaks. And I can't remember half of these. So this is a tweak I did, I guess. It's so loud. Yeah, so she swings slightly differently, but it's amazing. Just trust me. Rex squirming. Yeah, that was the thing that I actually didn't fix, but I'm taking somebody else's credit accidentally here. Did I fix it? Oh, I may have fixed it. Okay, yeah. Hello. Oh, yes. Thank you very much. So, oh yeah, we were trying different local outro things. So that was an experiment. None of that is very interesting. But what is really interesting is this. You see that face? Now that face is also in that shot. Thank you. They're just little tiny little things here and there, you know. It's very nice. And then I moved on to doing some promo stuff, meaning like things that were not animated by me. I animated Phil, but the rest of the team animated other stuff. But then I had to take it and kind of do a sound effect pass, kind of a poor man's version of sound effects, and then put I took the Nightfall soundtrack and I put that underneath, kind of make it a little spooky, kind of sinister and all that stuff, and then kind of slap a logo item thing at the end. So I have, let's see, Ellie first. The font may change. Hello, Coco. Oh my God, Coco. Coco's here. Oh, this is Coco.
All of a sudden, all the Instagram followers just went up.
Okay. There we go. And then did Rex Story also?
Animated by Gerard.
Yeah, this is Gerard. Yeah, exactly. Did Jay also? That is animated by Mac. Yeah, that is correct. And I started working on fill, but I have not completed fill. So what you will hear is just me doing a first pass on some of the like smaller sound effects, but haven't finished it. So it's missing the rest of it. And then, oh yeah, I was I was fixing a shot and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna fix this shot. It's gonna be great. And as I go into the shot, it had so many constraints. And I had to fix it in a way where I had to kind of bake it and I had to like transfer it more on twos. And as I baked it, when you bake things and it's constrained to a constraint to a constraint, sometimes things just kind of get a little bit crazy. But I managed to pull it off in a way that it looked totally fine. And I even did like a play blast out of it. Everything looked fine. I committed it. I told Andy, hey, it's there, it's ready. He opened the file and this is what it looked like. And he was like, I don't think it's ready. So I reverted that file and did it all again by hand, and then it worked all totally fine. And then yes, we spent, I think in total a whole day listening to the really cool first pass of the sound effects and the sound design, Matthew and I, and then wrote down all the notes. Just to be fair, a lot of the notes are like tiny little tweaks, so it just looks like a lot, but yeah, but that took a while. Why is it horrible? It's great. Yeah, I liked it. Thank you. Yeah.
We said thank you and please.
Yes, thank you and please. Okay, awesome. And that's it for me. Thank you very much.
So Hjalti showed you guys a glimpse what we were doing this week. Mainly just 99% of the film is rendered. And then we're addressing fixes, like shots are, we find that there's an intersection in something, we find that there's a continuity error in something, then a frame needs to be rendered or first checked and reanimated and then rendered. So it was my job this week to queue everything back to the farm and make sure it all gets rendered. So a lot of that was a little bit uneventful. So, oops. Oh, okay. Yeah, this is a video. So you see, like, there's an intersection of a wrapper that bothers us, and there's the tent that doesn't work. So most of the week, I just had to go in, add some masks, re-render something, then mask it thin. And this, like, we don't want that can here. So render out a little border piece, mask it out, and then that can is gone. And then the tent was going completely haywire in the final renders, which are final. So we had to re-queue it on the farm, render just that portion, and then mask it in and do the nice little compositing setup. And then everything works again. Same like with kind of like this stuff here, also quite uneventful. Like some things are just intersecting. Do a little border render portion of that, fix it, and then mask it in. Then some of the more exciting stuff was like this shot here, which is really super noisy. It turned out super noisy. This is with 800 samples on the farm. And the denoising doesn't really like that, that it's so noisy. So it turns it into a blotchy mess. So we tried various techniques this week. So you're going to see a highlight coming from Simon. One really lo-fi technique here that I used is rendering everything without all the protruding elements, and then just slapping kind of a render of the background on some kind of a hollowed out geometry, making sure that everything else, because the grass is noisy, right? So here you can see that geometry, and that just gets the camera, the first frame camera, and then reprojects that render onto that first frame. So you can kind of get to see that frame. But now all the noisy parts are static, and all the parts that are sitting on top of that are getting rendered like normally. So in the final version, which should come in about now, how can I fast forward with this somehow?
Full screen mode.
Control T? No, T. Okay. Here. Yeah. This is what it ended up being, which is hopefully less noisy. So not as distracting. But this was not, that wasn't, I can watch me break this. Yeah. Oh,
Don't delete the film. Don't delete the film.
oh, there we go. Okay. So yeah, one of the more exciting shots with that was this shot, which was one of our most patched up shot, which had little border renders of almost everything because they wanted to animate the ponytail of Ellie. I had to re-render that and send that in. I have to make some masks to render out portions to fix the noise. So I did the same reprojection trick. Background was rendered separately, foreground was rendered separately. So a lot of portions had to be re-rendered and recycled and made work because we can't just resubmit the whole thing because we don't have the time anymore. Yeah, and then the rest of the week I had some more creative tasks. The title of the film, we wanted to, like, what we worked on at first was this, here we go. First, we had this kind of red title, which is more horror film, but we wanted to bring the fun back into it. So I did some color experiments basically to see how we can make it a bit more fun. Eventually, Francesco ended up with a version that kind of informed how the credits look like. But then, yeah, I worked on some grading suggestions for the credits because for the credits, we want to get a little bit more stylized than the film itself to make it something different, because we're leaving the world of the film behind and we're going into something else, which is more like a picture book. So I tried different looks for this. And what we ended up with is this. So I'm not sure if it doesn't play with sound, but you can just imagine the sound. So this is what you actually saw in the film. Beautifully lit by Beau. He's going to show some of that stuff. Shading done by Simon, and layout and set work and everything was done by Julien. So we're still working on this, still fine-tuning some things, but early at the beginning of next week, we're going to make sure that it all ends up in the film. And is there anything else? Nah, let's call that done. That was my week.
Hi guys, I just drank 3 mojitos and I'm ready to go. And I also borrowed this jacket from Hjalti. As you work longer than a year together, you try to sync up with your clothing as well. So where am I? Control Q. Don't save. Thank you, Lord. And then I go to my weekly folder. So this week, we, like this week as the week before, we worked on promo work, the shorts that the little tags that Hjalti showed with the audio. So one of them, well, you already seen, but with audio. So this is the lesser fancy version. Yes, let me make it bigger. And this was actually a fix up. So I did some polishing on Gerard's work just to finish it up. And then I went to some promo work, which you already seen rendered. So it's basically everything, but less well represented without lighting and everything. But as you can see, like, we animated it, and then right after it's got rendered. So that's great. Some small animation there. So for this one, there was a note that came in from a couple of people that Matthew showed it to. And let me go to an earlier version. So within the movie, she progresses as a character towards her overcoming the fear and the sprite. So this is an older version that I'm going to show here, where she really, and let me actually loop it, where she with her walk, she was kind of disbalanced and felt very out of control almost, and we really wanted to make sure it looked cohesive with the surrounding shots. So we adjusted that animation with making it more stable and more focused on the point here. So right here, her look is more determined, more like I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna get out of here. So and then yeah, we worked a little bit on that last shot here, where the swing, we do a mix here of 2s and 1s, where the swing is actually on 1s, as you can see, and then right here we cut back to 2s to hook it up with the other shots. So we make that smooth motion read well, and then continue on 2s for the next shots. Apart from other small little CBBs and kickbacks and feedbacks and whatnot, that was my week.
All right. So this week I worked on the credits, the lighting. Oh, that's a spoiler. Okay, so it might be fun to go through some of the shots I worked on, where Julien did the layout and set dressing, and Simon the awesome shading. So basically this is what I started with, and the fanny pack here, let me see, shift, right? Okay, yeah. The fanny pack isn't really readable because of the background. The trees are lit up, and we want to create a bit more focus. So I added the shadow caster here and over here, or well, later, I think this one, created a shadow caster and basically darkened the background more, and basically this is it. Of course, the bird is already posed and everything, but this is a somewhat older version. All right. So, sorry guys, I have to get used to the shortcuts a bit. All right, so this one basically kept iterating. Also, the camera moved a bit forward to basically show better in frame. And in terms of lighting, this is everything is pretty much done. Some stuff is still rendering. You'll see that in the final film. Let me see. I think 60 will be a pretty interesting one to see. So this one is the one with the spider, and basically I started out first darkening the background, but the lighting setup itself wasn't really working. So at this point, I just relit the shot. So some of the changes you see here is just shading and set dressing from the other guys. And here we can see the difference in lighting, which is much better, more contrast, less flat, less front on, and started adding the web is being updated here. So with the dewdrops, and we added Simon came over and we went through the dewdrop lighting here. So what you see here is basically without specific dewdrop lights, but then we lose a bit of focus. So the shadow casters are actually allowing light through here, but then I added shadow casters back in, but retaining the lights on the dewdrops basically. And this is how it looks like. So this is the other side. It's kind of messy. It's really messy, but it works. So this is basically blocking the light, but it still makes sure that the dewdrops can be lit here. Yeah. Let's show one more. Let's see. 70. Yeah. So this one is completely static. Basically creating more focus. The thing with the dandelions is always that they're so bright. So I, throughout Village as well and Grove, I tend to darken them a bit, which I think is much better. But in this case, it's all right because it's the center of attention. So yeah, I think Simon has more up-to-date renders than I have at the moment. So I'm gonna let the next guy do that.
I'm not worried. I'm wearing denim pants, so it's fine. Okay. let's see. So just like Beau said, a bunch of tweaks this week. I'm just gonna like minimize this a little bit. Like there were little camera experiments of just like getting the cricket bat to be a bit bigger on the frame. So we went for like halfway, getting it a bit closer. And then just like removing clovers, adding the watch, and then also rotating it and making it rusty and all of that stuff. There's also this one, which kind of fell out of the entire selection because of the angle. So we tried to get it 3 degrees further down, 3 degrees more. And this is kind of the thing that we landed on, especially also because the barbecue is kind of has a nicer silhouette in front of the darker background. And yeah, it just feels more like we're on the ground. And then there's like a bunch of other small stuff, adding a bunch of more plants here, adjusting it. Really just many little things that I don't quite remember. At some point, for the credit slide for the developers, Sergey came to me and was like, can we add a frog? Like, so I just was like, sure, I'm gonna find the one frog we have in our library. So it's this one. Added to the background and like, okay, kind of lost. Okay, it's completely lost, but it's there. One of those green splotches. It's a frog. Then there's these guys here. So this was the first experiment for little printable figures. This is the slightly adjusted version with a nicer pedestal that you can actually grab. So there were some more little adjustments here, but it's not there. But this is basically it. These are going to be like what, 8 centimeters tall? 8 centimeters. That's what I imagine. Like, or actually, the elder Sprite is going to be 8 centimeters, and then the Sprite is going to be a bit smaller. And
Cool.
then there's so that's these two guys. And then there's also Ellie. So she's much bigger. There was like a little bit on a discussion of like, can we make them like kind of like to scale, not like at least to each other, but not life size. But it's basically impossible. The sprites are too small. So this is what I'm currently landing on. If you put them side by side, so at least the clovers are indicating a bit of the size. So in reality, the sprites would be like a 1/5 of the size or something. It's like they would be tiny. So it's more like these two, like the sprites are a lineup, and then maybe we can print even more human figures. We'll have to see. And then just to wrap up some of the previous work I did, like I managed to like render the turntables over here of the characters, and these guys, which I had to render locally because there was a problem with the hair script. Every time I sent it to the farm, the hairs would just be static. And then also wireframes. And then lastly, they are like, I didn't look at this for the longest time. It was the breakdown of the set. So just how it's constructed step by step. But the thing is, it would be nice if there's not that stretched ground in the background. So that's what I still fixed. We never see it in the movie, but it's still not that nice to show. And then also all of the mushrooms are floating, which is not great. So fixed a bunch of issues, sent it back to the farm, and then this would be immediately followed up by like lighting, like breakdowns and compositing, grading, all of the different steps so we can see the entire thing. And that's basically my week.
Okay, I did credits this week. I did the bird. Yes, doing bird things. So it's like, yes, simple and effective. I did the snails, doing the snail things, like moving slow, and this one chilling, and this one is sleeping, and this one is like, hey, what's up?
Are you going to animate it all the way up?
Yeah.
I mean, we need another movie for that, for next, for Fright 2. I did some butterflies flying. This one doing butterfly things. I did some ladybugs doing stuff. Yes, but ladybug things like staying there, and this one is like itchy, so it's doing this. And did more ladybugs. I'm the ladybug animator, so then we have these ones, they're moving, this one's looking, and this one is like, hey, what's up? And this one is, oh, well. So yeah, that's it.
All right. So this week, I looked into the wonderful topic of creating a DCP of our movie, which is a format that is used in cinemas. So I downloaded this open software, watched a bunch of tutorials, kind of like got into it a little bit, but we're still waiting for files from grading and from sound design to finally test this out. Then I was mostly in contact with our grading department and like discussed what kind of files they get, when we send them, how do we set up syncing, blah, 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 and everything. How does it work with the LUTs? So there was a lot of stuff going back and forth. And we set them up with syncing, which is great. So they basically are downloading our data directly from our server, all the shot frames and all our sound design and everything. And this is basically an export that I prepared for them, which they'll just get the latest versions of all the comps, all the EXR files, and just one audio file. And that's the starting point for them. And then we'll just get some media data back from them, which is then graded. Then I built a little tool for Hjalti, which is still kind of work in progress, but basically what it does is we have the situation that we have our comps in EXRs and JPEGs, and this little tool here can load all those files into the sequence editor. So now he says, hey, I want all the comp files, the preview ones in channel 3. Now build me this channel. And it will then just go through and load all our comps, and there it is. And then Hjalti can basically switch between the preview and the final with the little tool on the right there. And then he can say, okay, I want to view final, and then it hides the preview, and then he can say, I want to see preview, and then it hides the final. And it also does a bunch of stuff in the background, like it switches the color spaces, and it also actually sort of keeps the states of the clips. So if Hjalti goes in and hides something and then switches between preview and final, it will actually save that, so this doesn't get lost. Yes. And then I submitted another patch to the Blender code base, which got accepted, which lets you select files with the Python API in a file browser. And that's also what I was mostly working on this week, which is this media viewer we are using here at the moment. As you can see, it's not like super 100% working yet from a user perspective, but Beau did a great job. If he like remembered all the shortcuts, that's great. But there was a bunch of stuff now. You can like navigate with all your keyboards, with all the arrow keys, and get new media in there. We know the timeline toggling, the file browser toggling, and you can see it actually saves the selection on the left. So you don't lose that, which is great. That was the patch was that for that. And then, I don't know, yeah, you can jump in and out of folders with your backspace key and the enter key. So the goal is that you basically don't need the mouse anymore. It's not quite there yet. Then there's stuff like you can use the dot and the dot and the comma key to switch frames, and it actually wraps around. So here you can see, it jumps to the end, which is kind of cool. And I don't know, there's so much stuff. You can change the thing here with 1, 2, 3, and a lot of little fixes and improvements. And there's also new stuff coming next week. Just checking if I like missed anything here. Yeah, but that was stuff that I worked on this week.
Let's see what I did. Oh yeah, first some of the boring stuff in the beginning. In the end of last week, I just finished something that we need to do here, which is connecting the two pieces of liquid. As you can see, there was a stream and then the simulation that Andy handed over to me, and then I just made a small geometry node setup that connects them, so it's not as jarring. And then
there was one more shot with the sprite gore that you also saw in the edit that needed to be rendered. Magnificent. Oh yeah, and then the credits. You've also already seen a bunch of it, but I think this might be, I think I have the most up-to-date versions. So I did the shading on these, just making everything nice and weathered and aged, because it's supposed to be like a half or a whole year after the movie takes place, and everything needs to look a little bit more aged, and there were a bunch of things that needed to be tweaked. So this, I think, is the latest version for the bird. Then there is cricket bat. So there were a bunch of things. The leaves were kind of exploding with the lighting, so I made the shading adjustments so they actually blend a little bit better into everything, and then changed up the moss so it actually blends with the shading. And the watch came in at some point, and I adjusted the shader so it looks broken better, because it was kind of jarring here, and made some more tweaks to the moss and stuff like that. Then yes, the barbecue grill, made it super rusty all over the place. The can here as well. Added some moss here on the rim, and added in some grass to kind of fade the fade it a little bit from the here, this version, so it's a bit nicer. Then God, the shortcuts. Oh yeah, this one, I'm not 100% finished with this one. There's still a couple more tweaks that I wanted to do, but it's going to be finished today at some point. Yeah. Then Spiderweb, added the dewdrops with some geometry nodes so they actually hang down. Adjusted the shading so it looks good in terms of scaling, because it was a little bit strange before. Oh yeah, in the beginning, when just, oh, I don't have it. Never mind. Forget about it. Then the bloody boot, just bleaching out the colors a little bit and making the blood look a little bit more old, and yeah, just weathered, because this is how it looked before. Then this one, made the binoculars rusty, added some moss growth on them, fixed the shading on the tree and everything. Yeah. And this one, made the pocket knife rusty, added some moss, and added a little bit of an Easter egg over here. What is that? Yeah, so this is going to be the slide where we thank the developers and pipeline people and our community. So this is kind of fitting. Oh, that's it. And then the last one, Sprite sleeping underneath the notebook. Just integrate the moss, scaled it down a little bit, and made the spiral a little bit rusty. So that's the credits. And then today, or yeah, since yesterday, I got a little bit sidetracked with another thing. So we have this movie, and unfortunately, even with our highest render quality that we're using all over the movie, as soon as the camera is moving, you get a little bit of noise all over the place. Like, it's very jittery. So this is the 800 samples that Andy also showed in the beginning, but it's still very noisy. Also here in the moss, it's just jittering all over the place. So we're thinking, okay, how can we just fix this for the couple of shots where it's really noticeable? And I was thinking and came up with an idea and thought, okay, why not just go back a couple of months and start over with some R&D? So I made this, which, as you can see, is not jittering around, which is nice. But what is this? So the idea is to use a frame of the movie, or here I rendered out a new one, which is a little bit cleaner, a higher resolution, because that's going to be useful later, and use its depth information, because
it's a rendered frame. It's CGI, it's rendered. We can just pass out the information of the Z depth, how far away all points are from the camera, which we have. Needs to be cleaned up a little bit because there's a bunch of speckles, but we have that information. And then we can pass that into Blender and use some geometry nodes to make a model. So that's just a single rendered frame with some depth information, projected onto 3D space to recreate the model that was rendered basically from one frame. And then rendered, it looks like this if you project the image of the render onto it. And it renders pretty fast. It's just an image in 3D space. And then you can just render that for the whole sequence, which makes it look, if you just bake it on top, like this. So as you can see, basically no noise. But what is pretty interesting is if you actually take a closer look, you can actually see how it's taking effect, because here it's still super jittery. That's where there's no projected model. And here there's a line where it gets super clean. So yeah, it's pretty successful. We can probably do that on 1 or 2 more shots where it's also pretty noticeable, the noise. And just see how efficient that goes. The first iteration was still a little bit of work to actually get it to work, but yeah, I'm pretty happy with the result, and we'll see how much more we can use it. And that's my week.